Yeah, I think I wanted to talk about the rise of NFTs.
Very important subject. As myself, I'm a digital artist, and many of my friends on the island run artistic businesses. So this is actually a subject I've been bringing up a lot, and I appreciate you talking about it.
No, I go back with NFTs to pretty much the very beginning. The very first NFT was on Counterparty. So Counterparty was the second ICO and next to Mastercoin. They were both built on top of Bitcoin, and they had asset creation layers. And Counterparty was able to go in and use Bitcoin as gas, and they would then go and create both fungible and then non-fungible tokens. Technically, you could say that Bitcoin was the first NFT because there were also some things in 2013 called colored coins, where you would basically just take one Satoshi and you would put a message in it, and that would make it non-fungible. So you'd still, I guess you could say it was kind of semi-fungible because you could still spend it as a Satoshi. But you could take one Bitcoin, which back then was worth maybe $60, and divide it into 100 million parts. So you literally could have your own ecosystem that would still trade as Bitcoin. The problem was that you basically were really limited what you could do with the colored coin. So I would not consider it to be a non-fungible token. Counterparty, which was built on top of Bitcoin, literally allowed you to go and program into it. Again, it wasn't smart contracts yet, but it did allow you to do rare Pepe trading cards and some other things like that. And so that was fairly hot in 2014, early 2015. Counterparty was actually a very popular platform. It was responsible for about 30% of all of the coin market cap 100 at that time, because it was so easy to program on. And the reason why it kind of died was the gas price. Familiar with Ethereum these days? What happened was when Bitcoin had really low prices of gas, it was no big problem. Everybody developed on it. For example, storage, which launched in 2014 as well, would pay people $5 or $10 in storage coin to go and decentralize the shards of a file that would be then stored in portions on different people's computers. That was programmed in Counterparty, and XCP was the ticker, and you had to use Bitcoin as your gas. And that was fine when Bitcoin gas was a couple of pennies. All of a sudden, when we had the scaling wars, and before SegWit came in, and the miners and the programmers, the core developers couldn't, kind of make up their mind what types of, kind of scalability they wanted to have, you got to a point where it's $20 for gas. And it's hard to go and send a $5, storage monthly fee to someone if you have to pay $20 in gas. So I, was around the start of storage. We launched them into the market. I'm of course, for the people who don't know, I started Transform Group. We worked with about 350 blockchain companies and about, I think we're closing in on about 200 token sales now over the years. ICOs back when that was the word, now then IEOs, now IDOs. So things evolve, but working with a lot of DeFi companies, non-fungible tokens. But storage, back in 2014, we helped them launch. And I then advised Sean, the founder, to move over to Ethereum because of the lower fees. Whoops. So, obviously,
2020.
Obviously, they're now as expensive as Bitcoin ever was, and they have the solution, which is going to proof of stake, and it's going to be a battle as to whether they're able to hang on to their, their programmers and their applications when you're basically assaulted by Binance Smart Chain, which you can literally take the same smart program and just port it, and then Matic and Avalanche and a number of other ones. In terms of the original Counterparty programming, Counterparty's kind of died because of the fees, and also they did a very unusual thing with their ICO. They burned the Bitcoin that they got because they didn't want to get in trouble with the law. There was very unclear laws about doing a token sale. And so they thought also that Satoshi wouldn't be mad at them if they basically brought new crypto into the universe but then burned the Bitcoin. Of course, they all had to leave to get jobs later because they burned their damn Bitcoin. They didn't have any, they had 2,000 Bitcoin. That'd be, having a nice foundation these days if they spent it wisely. But at any rate, they all moved on and did different things. But the code still exists, and it's been developed in several projects, one of which is Ravencoin, which got up to about a $2 billion fully diluted valuation. That is a mineable version of the counterparty programming language. And another one is a project that's very near and dear to my heart, which is called Aspire. You can go to aspirecrypto.com to learn about it. They do fungible tokens that create NFTs underneath it. And what Jim Blasco, the core developer there, did was he reworked the counterparty code so that it would use Aspire Gas, which is GASP is the ticker, ASP is the Aspire ticker, as gas, and you can program that in so it's never going to get too expensive. Right now it's about 1 million transactions for $1. So even if the price goes up 100x, you're still going to be talking a very, de minimis fee for gas. And so that's really what one of the missions of Aspire is. And there's a lot of exciting things going on in both fungible and non-fungible tokens. And there are now chains, Aspire being one, but certainly not the only one, that are out there that help you go and, have a platform for your NFTs, whether they're Ethereum-based, counterparty-based, Divi, Jeff has spoken here a few times. He has some spin-outs where they're developing NFTs on their platform. And then there's Telos, which is an EOS.io fork. It's got, very streamlined version of the Ethereum virtual machine. So you can, again, port the code over to something that's virtually no fees. And Wax, which was what really, I'd say, the first NFT platform that was designed for creating and then selling NFTs. Really started out as a way of creating and really selling and managing the fees of video game skins. And they then moved up to NFTs.
Wonderful. It sounds like you have an incredibly long history with NFTs. The people that I know, for the most part, are just learning about NFTs, and when they're introduced to it, it's during this hype trend of selling art. In your opinion, NFTs have a much deeper value, correct?
Well, art is going to be art, music, video. They're all going to be the platforms that really, this is perhaps the one application that's really going to take crypto to the mainstream, right? Because when it was just, hey, Bitcoin, it's cool, and you can go and buy 5 things in the world with it. Alpaca socks, you need any alpaca socks? Find some place that'll take Bitcoin. And people are like, well, I have a credit card, I got dollar bills, why do I need to go and buy Bitcoin to spend Bitcoin with someone? So that, that's now evolved, that Bitcoin is seen more as a store of value or of large transactions. So if you want to go and, send somebody $10,000, it's much quicker to do it with Bitcoin than it is with a wire transfer, like instant. And the fees are a lot less. And I just scratch my head when someone says, yeah, can you send me a wire? I was like, you're in the crypto industry. Can I just send you Bitcoin or Ethereum? But that's sort of like one of the first levels of application. Obviously, Ethereum, they say Bitcoin is digital gold, and Ethereum is digital oil because you actually use it for something, and it's the fuel for smart contracts. Obviously, they've just gotten started on smart contracts powering supply chain management. And then obviously, decentralized finance is really, kind of grown from a $0 billion to a $60 billion industry in less than a year. And I think it's really just getting started. The average, person in the world who has a savings account or used to have a savings account before they became basically zero interest or negative interest doesn't realize, they may have heard of Bitcoin, they may have heard of DeFi, but they don't quite get that they could be making 10, 12% on their USDT, USDC, their stable dollar equivalent with pretty limited risk. And if they want to go and do this crazy yield farming stuff, they could be making 100% a year of returns with a little bit more sophistication, as opposed to, you know, give it the Banco Popular and sit there and collect your 0.2%.
Do you mind talking a little bit more about that last subject you talked about?
DeFi?
No, not DeFi.
Oh, NFTs. Back to NFTs.
No,
sure.
no, excuse me. You were talking about, as far as NFTs being used.
Being the killer app?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if you look what's going to bring, you know, most technologies kind of follow this S-curve, where you have a long period of time where it's the early adopters. And they're all passionate, and the rest of the world thinks they're crazy.
Sure.
And what they want is different than what the mainstream wants. And this is with everything, right? If you take a picture of, I've seen pictures of New York City in the early part of the 1900s. And I think it was like 1908 versus 1918. I forget the exact year, but they're about 10 years apart. 1908 was a picture of New York City. It was primarily horses, maybe one car. 10 years later, it was all cars. So when all of a sudden, you know, it becomes acceptable, then all of a sudden it becomes adopted.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting near that tipping point right now. And when you've got, I never remember artists, musicians, creatives being passionate about crypto before. And I've been in this for, you know, nearly 10 years. Now all of a sudden it's just like, you know, that's all they can talk about.
It's ubiquitous, it's across
Because
everywhere.
it's a way of, you know, not just having, you know, a way of saving, a way of earning, a way of compounding interest, a financial product. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of actually, I mean, when the internet became a way to go and reach a global market through e-commerce, it was much more powerful than it was just, you know, chat rooms that you were using AOL, you know, and then later, you know, IRL and things like that to, you know, pick up girls or learn about girls who lived, you know, 4,000 miles away under a fake name. All of a sudden, when you could go and, you know, buy something on the internet, and that was considered to be really crazy at the time. When Mark Andreessen, who's now obviously a big player in the crypto space with his Andreessen Horowitz fund, you know, being the money behind, you know, Uniswap and a number of other big crypto things. He was the first money behind, you know, Coinbase, and you know, so he's been really at the cutting edge of this long before it was cool. I mean, he was putting money into crypto projects as a venture capitalist in 2012, 2013. So that was really early. But when he first got out of college, and you know, Mark Andreessen has had like 3 different lives, and they've all been very successful. He had Mark Andreessen, you know, creator of the first web browser. Actually, the first 3. He created Netscape, which was a variation that was reprogrammed from his college project, which was became Internet Explorer. And then what Mozilla was also based on the same code. So really, Firefox, Internet Explorer, and you know, pretty much everything that Chrome is, you know, has its roots in Andreessen. He then went on and basically, about 10 years later, created the first kind of cloud computing, one of the first big cloud computing giants, and was laughed at when he said, client server is dead, everything's going to be cloud. And they're like, who are you kidding? You know, Salesforce is never going to beat SAP. You know, now they're much bigger, right? And, you know, this has been kind of his third wave with, you know, breaking into the 50-year-old venture capital Silicon Valley fund business that prior to him, there was no top-tier funds that weren't started in the 1970s. That's when Sequoia started, that's when Kleiner Perkins started, I mean, Draper, I mean, all those guys were like Silicon Valley royalty, and here's this kid that was like, you know, I think born in the 70s, and coming in and disrupting them, and really getting much better returns, too. So the point of that was I saw an interview with Andreessen comparing what's happening in Bitcoin and blockchain with the early internet, and I see a lot of parallels having lived through both eras as an entrepreneur. When he got his funding out of school to do Netscape, when Jim Clark said, okay, you don't like my interactive TV idea, I will give you money to do anything you want. And he came up with a business plan for Netscape. And so all of a sudden he's got freshman funding. He goes out to the New York Times and says, you should put the New York Times on the internet, call it NewYorkTimes.com. And they threw him out of the office. They said, why on earth do we want to do that? We like our print. We make money on it. We want people to take our newspapers. And then he went to Macy's and said, you should have Macy's.com. They threw him out of the office. They said, what are you, crazy? We want people to come into our store. We don't want people sitting at home. We want to have them go and buy things randomly, etc. And besides, it's not like anybody would ever put a credit card on the internet. And so when you have a superior technology, but it's just the GUI isn't there yet, or the final pieces aren't there yet, it inevitably succeeds. You just need to, as Mark Andreessen put it back then, it was a great interview, he said, everything I was told was going to kill the internet, $1 billion plus company was created to solve that problem. Can't put a credit card on the internet? Hello, VeriSign. Can't find what you need on the internet? Hello, Google. Don't know anybody on the internet? Hello, Facebook, right? Can't buy anything Amazon and on. So I think that we're approaching the stage of, the public blockchain that is going to be similar to what, say, just after the dot-com crash and resurrection happened, when everybody thought the internet was going to be dead, and instead it became bigger than ever, right? You got to remember, in 1999, Google had just gotten its seed round. Facebook didn't exist yet. Most of the biggest companies right now, were in their infancy or didn't exist. You could not get an internet company funded in 2002 to save your life, and yet they were giants 10 years later. And I think the same thing's going to happen here. Look at Coinbase. They're going public for $100 billion. I think 2 years ago you would have been like, wait, Bitcoin's not dead? I thought they arrested the guy.
It's been an interesting journey as far as digital currencies. I have a lot of clients in e-commerce. I see them actively shifting over to accepting Bitcoin. This is a better method for them. It's a better way of transferring assets between each other. And when I see people using PayPal and Stripe, it almost starting to look archaic. This is a system that is not benefiting the people as much, whereas now we have an alternative of Bitcoin. Do you see large e-commerce giants you think they will adopt this technology and begin accepting Bitcoin on their website?
Well, and again, I don't think Bitcoin's going to be your ultimate winner in day-to-day commerce. It's going to be store of value, and it's going to be kind of the reserve cryptocurrency, even if it's not the reserve currency for the world, which a lot of people think it ultimately will be, and certainly will replace gold at this rate in terms of what backs currencies, or what people want to go and compare value to. But in terms of, it's just not fast enough, and that's fine. You've got a number of other things that are much faster, and it'll be a battle now to see who becomes the preeminent, kind of high-speed programmable cryptocurrency. I'm an advisor to a company called Temptum. That's 140,000 transactions per second, and it's programmable. And they're right now negotiating with different countries to be the back end of their, digital currency for the country, which I think 10 years from now, most countries will have, their own digital currency, because it saves them a lot of money on printing these bills, and it means that you can tax everything because you see where every dollar goes. So government should love it. But what that does then is it also makes everybody used to having cryptocurrency, and so it's hard to say, take the US dollar coin, but don't take that Bitcoin stuff or Ethereum. So it's just going to be a comfort level with digital currency that will lead to an explosion of interest, just the way NFTs are leading the path right now, because the other thing is there's very few legal issues around NFTs. In fact, when they just came up with a new global guidance on FATF, which is this group of regulators trying to figure out how to apply banking rules to cryptocurrency, they used to say that you had to go and report above a certain amount any convertible cryptocurrency, and they added the word fungible. They don't want to be having KYC on buying your piece of art. and they recognize that digital collectibles are not something that's going to be aiding terrorist funding. Otherwise, they would have to go and say, well, we have to check every time somebody buys an automobile to make sure they're not shipping it to the, to the Ayatollah.
So I think it'd be a great time to take some questions from the audience if you want to do a little bit of more fireside conversation.
I can talk a little bit more about NFTs, where I think it's going.
Yeah.
So I think right now NFTs are in their infancy. Right now the main platform is Ethereum. Most people, I'm on a daily basis getting people saying, how do I learn about NFTs? Are there any good books? Are there any good courses? And it's really kind of early. I can tell people all sorts of books to read on Bitcoin. Any of the books on NFTs pretty much came out in the last month, and they're usually the $2.99 Amazon freebies. But I'm sure there'll be definitive books and videos and how-to guides. There are new companies, most of them less than a year old, that will go and say, hey, here's a plug-and-play, one-click solution to do a simple NFT. Some of them are built into the platform. Wax, for example, has one. They, of course, make you have approval. I also am an investor and advisor to a company called Rare, R-A-I-R, Rare.tech. And, what's interesting is a lot of people don't realize that some of these NFTs, you're spending $3,000 for, NBA Top Shots, I think, got a lot of attention. The two things that really got NFTs on the map in a big way this last month were people selling one piece of art for $69.7 million at Christie's, steamed auction house, and the NBA Top Shots selling $217 million to 76,000 people, average cost about $3,000, of these moments where you'd get an NFT, and inside the NFT, which looks like a LeBron James trading card, you actually have a video to watch. Well, here's the thing. Number one, it's a video you can find on YouTube, so how rare is it? It has a rare hash mark, but it's not a rare video. Personally, I think if you're going to get something, pay that kind of money, you want to have LeBron saying, hey, I'm going to show you the wildest dunk I haven't showed anybody else, and then and you're the only one who can see it. So Rare allows that because they actually have digital watermarking on every file, and the media is then stored on local and then decentralized servers that are encrypted on IPFS. As opposed to, I'd say, the majority of NFTs out there, if you look deep into the code, the image is stored on Amazon, and it's available other places. So we're still in the early days in terms of what people should expect out of their NFTs. Again, there's a number of different platforms. Rare also does books as NFTs. I think that you're going to have competition to YouTube in terms of having videos as NFTs because the creators see a better way of monetizing. Because right now, you're having a lot of pushback against quote-unquote big tech, right? Facebook owns you, Twitter owns you, Google owns you, and every single one of those now has decentralized alternatives coming up. And there were decentralized alternatives years ago, but they just weren't quite ready for prime time. Hey, we have a decentralized Facebook. We've been working on it for 5 years. We might get our blockchain testnet up in the next 5 years. Now they've actually got things that are, you're not buying tokens in, wishes and dreams on a white paper. You actually have, testnets usually live before the token sales even happen. So it's a different level of kind of thresholds needing to be met. And so I think that you're going to find that there's going to be an explosion of minting platforms and auction platforms, and then just blockchains that are low gas and high performance. You're also going to have, an artist has to decide, do I want to go and create unique pieces of art that I'm going to get top dollar for and that's it? Or am I going to go like most artists do, and I think art's a very good one to talk about. You might, if you're a successful mid-tier artist, you may be charging $20,000 for an original painting. You may have a serigraph that is 50 pieces that are 5 passes through the printer, high-level printer. You add some little paint touches on it, so it's not an original, but it kind of feels like the artist loved it. And there's 50 of them, and they're personally signed. Then you get a lithograph, and that's maybe $2,000 instead of 20. I'm thinking of something like Shag, right? I had a chance to buy it original years ago before it was really famous. I was like, could have gotten an original for $5,000. Now they want those for prints. So then the next level down is lithographs, which are usually, another 0 added on the number that are out there, and another 0 subtracted. Another 0 subtracted in terms of the cost. So maybe you're having 500 of them, and there's no special touches. There's only one print run through, but they're numbered and signed by the artist. And then the last one is Walmart prints. Unlimited, no scarcity, no signing. It's $20. So I think that you're going to have that with NFTs. You're going to have an original piece of art that is one of one. You're going to then have kind of the rare or super rare versions, 5, maybe 10 of them, that have perhaps some airdrops in it, right? With musicians, for example, Kings of Leon released their album on NFT, and they had some of the NFTs, the higher level ones, would have attached to it the backstage passes for a concert. So you can do these things. Those are doable on the web, but they're just in code, and they can't be hacked and they can't be faked when it's done on an NFT.
Which I think, and it is a little bit hard to hear and concentrate on speaking, but I do appreciate you talking about this, because I actually think this is a very important topic, especially for the Puerto Rican people. Any creatives who might not be understanding how they can enter into blockchain. NFTs represent a way for them to sell their product.
Yeah, so one thing I'm doing, I got the URL, I haven't put the site up yet, but I'm going to be starting a just community-oriented website that's called nftpr.org. So NFTs for Puerto Rico, and it's a place where Puerto Rican artists can sort of show off their work in a gallery, and ideally they can also have it be a hub to do kind of if they want to go and say raise money for their favorite charity, they can go and do an NFT sale, and we'll point resources toward that. So it's kind of like just something that I thought should be done. I don't know if he came tonight. I gave him an invitation, but did Draco show up tonight? At any rate, the Ricky Martin's bandmate in Living with the Vida Loca wrote and produced it. Has 4 Latin Grammys and 1 international Grammy. I was introduced to him in the last week, and I had dinner with him to discuss NFTs and what it can do for artists, and what it can do for Puerto Rico. There's so many great artists in Puerto Rico. I mean, we probably in the musical side, I don't think there's any place in the world that has more accomplished musicians per capita in Puerto Rico. At one point, I think it was like 15 of the Billboard 20 when one summer was like Puerto Rican artists, right? It's crazy for 7 billion people in the world, and 3 million of them here. And then also just the art scene here as well. So I think that the technology scene with the number of people in the blockchain have come down over the last number of years. I obviously was the first one to come down here in 2016. I'd say there's got to be at least 400 or 500 of us down here now. And then the great art scene that's been here forever, that keeps evolving and innovating. It's nice to be able to see an opportunity for the two communities to work together and really put Puerto Rico on the map again.
100%. I see this communal effort where technology and creativity is finally coming together. For a long time, creatives were often making content. They were simply doing the cover albums. But now this gives them a way to use the technology to lift themselves up. As a community, blockchain and NFTs specifically give creatives an opportunity to join this conversation. I talk to a lot of people, and they they don't really know where they can be a part of this community. Some of these conversations are very high level. Some of the verbiage is too complex. But I think everybody can understand is selling your work for more and getting more value for what you have. For artists, this is probably one of the first opportunities where they can take what they do and charge what it might really be worth without involving a middleman. You know, an art gallery, you know, the digital art gallery now, as you mentioned, is super rare. These places are taking a lot less of a commission from them, and they're enabling them to profit the same way somebody in a tech startup or in Wall Street might accrue wealth.
Well, that's a good point. And the other point is that NFTs can be purely digital art. It can also be a piece of digital art that then comes with the original as the airdrop. So if a gallery is taking, you know, 30 or 40 or 50 or 60%, you'll go to, like, you know, marketing it on OpenSea or on Nifty Gateway or this or that. And, you know, some of these platforms are taking, you know, 1% or less. And then it's just a marketing exercise. And, you know, that's what artists are great at, especially if they have a platform. And, you know, so that means that they can go in and get attention because they're early in a hot space. I mean, you know, some people on Instagram had certainly followed and heard of people, but he just, like, shot up in significance pretty fast in the art world in the last few months. And, you know, now all of a sudden some of the more established artists are going like, wait, I've like won all these awards for the last 50 years, how do I get mine? And so there's really going to be a lot of demand and supply growing at the same time, which rarely happens. And so it's going to be an exciting few years. And the technology, I think, is able to handle it. I don't think it's all going to be on Ethereum, but it's going to be a very interesting, you know, kind of growth to where I can see 10 years from now, maybe even 5 years from now, the predominant way anybody buys art is through an NFT.
I think you're probably right that this will shift a lot of the ways that we view and consume and are able to access art. In your opinion, do you have a prediction of what coin may come to the top as being a better use than Ethereum?
Well, that's simply the blockchain. So there's probably, well, look, Flow was Dapper Labs. Dapper Labs created CryptoKitties, which sort of they didn't create the NFT, but they certainly got a lot of publicity when they slowed Ethereum blockchain to a crawl with all the popularity of CryptoKitties. And they recognized that they needed to have a better blockchain, and so they got $250 million of venture funding. Again, Mark Andreessen was part of that, on a $2 billion valuation. And they created the Flow blockchain, and they also put together the NBA Top Shots. And it seems like a crazy high valuation, but, you know, they've only been kind of live now a couple of months. They have a fully diluted market cap on Flow of almost $40 billion. And obviously a lot of the tokens were airdropped to the VCs. And the actual for-profit of business, I don't know what pieces they're taking, you know, from like the licensees for Top Shots. I think it waxed at 70-30 or something. But, you know, let's say they're getting 30% of $200 million a month. And again, it may not be every month, but that's what they did last month from NBA Top Shots. That's a pretty good, you know, start on justifying your $2 billion valuation. So, you know, I think we're just getting started in this space, and I think that it's not going to be, people aren't going to care about, you know, what the platform is. I mean, when I give you my phone number, you say, is that Verizon or T-Mobile? You just want to know that you can call it, right? So people will, we're heading toward a multi-blockchain world where everybody will be on numerous blockchains. You'll have your Trezor, your Ledger, and it'll have all the tokens you need, and you'll use the tokens for, you know, maybe you'll use Wax for your sort of like low-end Street Fighter, which, you know, now they're Garbage Pail Kids that they sold out really quickly. The next innovation there is they're going to actually have Garbage Pail Kids in Walmart that actually have the NFT as an airdrop to the toy. So, there's a lot of creativity in terms of just how you market these things. And so I think that the kids who are growing up now, like Gen Z, not kids as in their 20s or teens, but kids who are like 8, they're going to grow up never having remembered when there weren't NFTs. And so it's really going to be, they talk about digital natives for the last 20 years. We now have blockchain natives, and you're going to have NFT natives, and they're going to develop everything with NFTs in mind. And the tools will be very simple. It'll be a lot simpler than, running an e-commerce site. You're going to have, one-click minting on sites, and that'll be a competition of who does it best, who has the lowest fees. Those will be the ones that win, and there'll still probably be 10 blockchains that, kind of compete for different sectors of the market.
So in your opinion, NFTs are less of a trend and more of a disruptive technology. They really will change the way we purchase and market things.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it's not going to have a bubble that goes back, but the internet, had a bubble and it popped in 1999, and some of the fluffier companies, went out of business after dropping 99%. I would safe to say the internet is still alive and doing well.
Agreed. So as far as NFTs for musicians, this subject kind of transpires past, just digital artwork and is a way to sell a unit of technology. As far as you can sell an MP3, you can sell a PDF. One of the most interesting things I've seen so far in NFTs is somebody sold a 3D art piece, which then unlocked a ticket to the Virgin Islands to an event. And once you purchased and went to the event, it unlocked a neural transmitting brainwave training exercise.
Yeah, I think this is possibly the final death knell for the mainstream record companies. They're not even records anymore, right? Right now they basically were able to make a deal with Spotify that, they weren't able to stop the innovation that happened with the peer-to-peer revolution that Napster started. They were able to put them out of business because it was a centralized server. They were able to go to some of the places that were decentralized or at least distributed, like Morpheus and Kazaa, and literally just send, Gestapo to their homes all over the world, arrest them, shut them down. And then finally, Steve Jobs came up and said, hey, instead of fighting, why don't you just let people have the iTunes. Most people don't want to steal music, they just want to have it convenient and not have to go and drive to the mall, pay $19 for an album where they only want one song on it. And so iTunes started that, and then, Yahoo Music, and then eventually Spotify has just been the game changer. One of the most profitable, fast-growing. And the record companies didn't fight it because they're like, oh, we'll make a deal with you that we still get the margins or even better than we ever wanted, and we'll just screw the artists.
This is a good point, too, because I think that in general, some people look at NFTs as maybe not having as much value. When looking at it in this context for the music industry, for creatives, it's really freeing them from a relationship with producing and record labels that were taking advantage of them. So it really is decentralizing music.
Well, I think what decentralization means is that even when you have winners, right? So you're not having the same phenomenon, at least yet, of stacks, right? So the internet was meant to be decentralized, or at least distributed. Back in the early days, there was a lot of, there was a T-shirt that the Electronic Freedom Foundation had, I think I still have one, that said, the internet considers censorship as damage and routes around it. And it was all like, free speech, free this, free that. We know what's happened today, right? You ended up having, yes, the internet-based layer is still fairly distributed and decentralized, although it does have governments still able to pull the plug and create laws over it. And then you have these de facto stacks that are for-profit, too big to fail companies like Facebook and Google. And right now, Ethereum is, still pretty decentralized. And if you want to say there's a stack on top of it, like maybe MetaMask, which is owned by Consensus, which is one of the founders of Ethereum that started a private company, they're still kind of like have the foundation of decentralization there. And I know there's a lot of Consensus folks that moved to Puerto Rico, so. And because if they don't, it's just so much easier to move. I mean, once you're locked into Facebook, it's hard to kind of find all those friends on another network, right? But if all of a sudden MetaMask started doing bad behavior, you move to 1inch, you move to, it's very, the cost of, moving from one platform to another on a decentralized blockchain that work with other decentralized blockchains within an overall, kind of wallet ecosystem, multi-chain wallet ecosystem, is fabulous. It really leads to true freedom of entrepreneurship. And again, if you don't like the laws of one country, it's a global internet. Go somewhere else.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One thing you also talked about that was a little higher level was yield farming. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that, or is that?
No, I can talk about it. So yield farming is, not for the faint of heart, but if you have, I always like to say this. I think the last time I spoke here a few months ago was somebody asked me about, when you buy Bitcoin or what price you should do it. And I'm just like, if you have more time than money, invest your time, right? And so there are all sorts of projects that want to pay you in their crypto for doing things, for content creation, for doing a video. And, that's pretty much how I earned most of my crypto. It wasn't me going in and like paying with US dollars to buy Bitcoin at a low rate. I've worked with like hundreds of projects and they're like, hey, can I pay you in, Bitcoin or Ethereum? Well, of course you can. Can you pay me in your token? In my token, it's only worth a penny. Let me take a look at it. Yeah, I think it's promising. I've certainly, made more Bitcoin by, getting what are often called shit coins, but they're not shitty because they actually do something. And they grow into like, right now, Bitcoin's almost, it's $55,000 as of about an hour ago. And it's been as high as 62,000. The odds are it'll be over 100,000 at the end of the year. So that's a 2x. But there are coins out there that will probably be 10x, 100x, 1,000x. You just have to pay attention. I do this full time, and I don't even know where all they are. And I got a lot of people feeding me information, and I have Transform Ventures where we invest in those companies. I got Transform Group where we advise and do PR and marketing for these companies. And I still hear something that went 100x. It's like, wow, how did I miss that one? There's just a real wealth of. But if you got more time than money, and you're interested in this, spend your time out, and then you'll find, and all of a sudden you got money and time, and then eventually you get to the point where you have, more money than time, and then maybe you partner with somebody who also has more time than money. And it's the same thing with NFTs. Figure it out, innovate. That's it's a nice thing about being an artist is that you have time to think and create, but you also have time to sort of innovate with the technologies because they are creativity based. Now yield farming, I know I sort of changed the topic a little bit there, is something that takes a while to learn, but if you learn it and learn the technology, it's not simple, but it's not complicated. I'd say probably takes a couple of weeks of sort of reading through, learning best practices, maybe failing a couple times where you end up, getting your trade doesn't go through, but they take the $15 in Ethereum anyway. I had a client that actually lost $15,000 when a smart contract didn't execute, and they took the fee anyway. They were uploading a whole bunch of, they were uploading a pool for a new token. And so it's still really early. DeFi is really only about a year and a half old. CeFi is a little bit older than that. I worked with one of the very first CeFi companies. Celsius launched a coin agenda, which we hold every year in Puerto Rico, Coinage in the Caribbean. We also hold it once a year in Las Vegas. It'll be October this year for Coin Agenda Global number 8. And then Coin Agenda Caribbean will be the week after Art Basel. It'll be the first year that's not in February or March because COVID wasn't time to have it, but I think now that things are moving toward NFTs, it'll be nice having it right after Art Basel. People will go down to Miami and just take a flight down here and continue your discussion on NFTs.
Yeah, I imagine NFTs are going to be a very large part of the conversation in both Art Basel and the new art events that come up. As far as events like this, I think this community, this event has provided a lot of people with an outlet for where to talk about these kind of subjects. I think it's also really important for people to talk about what they don't know. I think you talk about some incredible topics that might go over some people's heads, and I really appreciate you taking and explaining some of the smaller concepts for people that aren't as advanced in the industry, because I do see a lot of different types of faces out there, and I think it's really interesting to be including people that are more at a beginner level, and then meeting people like programmers, people that have started their own coins, and having these people mix and mingle. The conversations I'm hearing are really incredible. People teaching other people about the methods and the ways that they've elevated themselves, how to use blockchain technology for creatives. Like, these are conversations that I think are really important for the people of Puerto Rico and in our city for it to rise up. Because this concept of being able to trade money, to be able to take the power back of our finances is a really important subject. So I really appreciate you talking. If there's anything else you want to speak about, you can go ahead.
No, I'm good. We can turn it over to the audience. I don't want to take too much time up.
Somebody have a...
This is my first question for you. Which stable coin do you think is the best to go use?
Can you say that one more time?
Which stable coin do you like?
What stable coin do I like? I mean, a stable coin's a stable coin. It's all worth $1. I mean, Tether is the one that I actually launched Tether. I was, did the marketing for that back when, Brock Pierce, who's another Puerto Rican, created it back when it was called Real Coin, and then it got rebranded as Tether. So I was part of the team that did the marketing for that. They sort of, they're used for what I think stablecoin should be used for, which is not a store of value like instead of a bank account. Although people now with DeFi are kind of using it that way, right? So they'll go in and make 10% on that. And I think because it's on so many exchanges, that seems to be the one of preference. There are people who are using USDC now, which is Circle, just because New York State was kind of accusing them of being scammy and unaudited and fractional, everything that JP Morgan does every day, except much worse. But they finally ended up saying, we couldn't find anything you did wrong, but we will fine you $6 million anyway for the hell of it. And now they're, I like Tether in terms of just, it's the one that most people, it's the one you can get the most interest on, right? You can go literally even to a centralized exchange, which arguably is going to be at least less risk than, some of the smart contracts. Although again, an audited smart contract, you just have to decide which risk you want to take. And now there's also, I'm advising an investor in Bridge Mutual, ticker is BMI. They're the largest, decentralized insurance company. So they actually go and have peer-to-peer insurance of smart contracts. So that if, right now there's, half a dozen, centralized and probably more than that decentralized contracts that, you're trusting that won't run away with your money. So far, the only one that literally kind of someone ran away with the money, or at least they're still trying to figure it out, was a centralized company. That was MyCred. you know, and then so far, I mean, for the most part, I mean, some of them had kind of bugs and they crashed temporarily, but for the most part, you know, you put, yeah, I was skeptical. I mean, I remember when, you know, YFI went from $8 to like a couple thousand, and a friend of mine was really bullish on it. I was like, yeah, it seems like it's really run up quite a bit. It went up to 40,000, you know, so, you know, you can't catch every one of them, but I think DeFi is here to stay, and I think it's only going to get larger and, you know, more innovative and have more risk taken out of it. I'm also an advisor to Yield app. Unfortunately, they don't let Americans have that yet because our government here to protect us from, you know, actually making money. But Yield app is paying 20% interest right now. And the way they do it is they have a DeFi-CeFi combination where they basically have a bank in, I think, Estonia and another one in Comoros that regulates them. And they go off and do yield farming, and they're making 45%. They're using your money and giving you 20%. And, you know, it's good for them and good for their token holders who then distribute the rest of it. And, you know, Yield app, I think today was about 80 cents and, you know, went out at 6 cents, and it's only been out for a few months, so I'm still bullish on that one.
Do you
Not
have
financial advice.
Do you have an opinion on the graph, GRT?
You know, I know it popped when it went out. I know that it's benefiting from kind of the move away from Ethereum. I don't know that much about it because I've got so many. I have a hard enough time just keeping up with the projects that I'm working with that I don't really, you know, do a lot of research on things after they've already come out.
Sure.
Unless it's like a top 10.
Do you have a standard? Do you have a standard process for how you take a look at new projects? Is there a nice format you use?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple people, you know, who help me with it too. I'm, you know, starting to hire people down here on the island for Transform Ventures and for my advisory group. I still have most of the PR division, you know, in media cities like New York and San Francisco. But if everybody's down here and has that kind of background, we're hiring. If you got a, you know, PR industry, you know, if you're good with placing stories with high-tech media, I want to talk to you, or financial media. And then we got our trade show group out of Las Vegas for obvious reasons. That's where kind of the conference business is. You know, but here, you know, there's a lot of, you know, bright minds in, you know, the technology area, and a lot of people moving here. You know, so I have a team of people that help me research projects, and then, you know, I also look at like the things that most investors look at. You know, the majority of good deals come from someone that I already know and I've already invested with before. You know, if one of the founders of Ethereum, you know, says you should look at this deal, the odds are it's going to be a pretty good deal.
Sure. Do you have any advice for young programmers developing their own projects, how they can get ahead?
Well, hang out in places like this. This is a really great community, and then, you know, there's a lot of other things going on, and you get to meet people and, you know, find out what they do, and just, you know, again, if you got more time than money, just, you know, kind of volunteer. The first join is free, as they say, and then you'll probably get offered a job, or you get offered a contract position, or get offered tokens. And, you know, there's no lack of, you know, projects down here that, I mean, the top 100 projects, I think probably 10 of them have, you know, people who are either the CEO or on the founding team down here. Again, for an island of 3 million people, I think per capita, maybe other than Kiev, I think we have more people than any other place around in terms of top projects.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see this community develop here. You know, it almost reminds me of a young Silicon Valley. You know, the energy, the excitement.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke at the Puerto Rico panel at South by Southwest last week. I was sponsored by Invest Puerto Rico, and they had me and Luke Stokes on, and some Puerto Rican entrepreneurs. And, you know, I had said that, you know, what we're creating now is sort of has this kind of magical city moment going for it. Imagine what it would be like in Paris in the 1920s when Picasso was there, right? or New York when they had the Algonquin Round Table of all the famous writers. You have a place and it draws other people who want to be there because people they respect have moved there to be with other people they respect. And, there's, at that point, it's almost like, why bother, you don't even care why they moved there. I mean, Paris for the light and, proximity to great weather and food and, and then New York for the publishing industry. I was in Las Vegas when Tony Hsieh, brought Zappos down and then sold it to Amazon. Completely, changed the city. When I first moved to Las Vegas, which is where I was before I moved to Puerto Rico, there was no tech. The only tech was basically the casino industry programming slot machines. And, when Tony, moved down, he looked at Las Vegas as being an opportunity to kind of create a cooler version of Austin in downtown. And he did. He was very successful at that. And it's a real shame that he died so young. He really, and that was a magical time when the early days of sort of the downtown project. Same thing with Santa Monica. I had an office in Santa Monica for like 10 years on the promenade, and a lot of it was during the height of what they called Silicon Beach. I think Miami now is starting to try to develop that, and quite frankly, the Miami and Puerto Rico connection should get stronger because they're actually going out there and saying, hey, the mayor's saying we want to go and bring Bitcoin business into town and we're going to buy Bitcoin for our treasury. And, they still don't have the tax breaks that we do. They still don't have a lot of the other things that we do. And so the two cities should partner up a little bit. By the way, there is a Bitcoin, the first in-person Bitcoin conference that I know of that's going to be substantial is the first week of June, Bitcoin 2021. It was supposed to be in San Francisco and it got canceled, 2020 of course. And I'll be participating in it in a couple of different things. We're going to do a BitAngels, a couple of events around there, and I'm thinking about maybe doing a Coin Agenda NFT. I don't know if Alex Lightman is here. He actually gave me the idea where you'll go and learn about NFTs in a little one-day event, and then walk away with a Coin Agenda NFT as part of it, as well as your own one.
Interesting. Yeah, I really like the idea of events where people can meet up and learn about something in a quick way. I think for a lot of people, these events is how they learn about Bitcoin. Talking about NFTs is something that isn't done in a lot of circles. So I think it's really important for this community as a whole to continue collaborating, for people like you to take time out of your schedules to come up here and elaborate on these concepts. I mean, I thought it was fascinating.
Well, I live 5 minutes away. It's not that hard.
It's awesome, though, to be able to be here. I think anybody that's been in a startup before probably knows the feeling of excitement, of there being nothing and there being potential for immense greatness. That's kind of the feelings that I get when I come in these rooms, is I see all these motivated people that don't know each other, and they're beginning to establish deeper relationships. They're beginning to understand a technology that was totally foreign to all of us. Like, we're at a precipice where we can begin evolving this technology the way we see fit. So for artists taking cryptocurrency, for musicians using NFTs to really further their career, these are amazing. It's not just how do the wealthy retain their wealth, how do they get more wealth. It's about how young people charge more for their work. It's how we take back power for not having a system to get more wealth. I think whatever coin you choose, I think it's important to do your research. I think that when you take a look at this industry as a whole, it's important to keep a really open mind that things are changing as we speak, and you can be part of that. Michael has provided some amazing introspective of having seen this industry start from nothing. I mean, I remember when Macintosh computers was the Apple IIc, and you could play Turtle. Now you can start an entire empire from your phone, and you can trade millions of dollars in the click of a button. So that conversation, I think, is something that's very important to everybody, and I'd love to pass it out and get a question from the crowd now.
So In a future where artist creators are deploying their digital assets to the blockchain, ideally only to the blockchain, how do you think that platforms like Spotify, Apple Music are going to coexist with the blockchain?
Platforms like what?
How will platforms like Spotify and how will they compete with this?
I think they'll have to adapt or die. In other words, they will, if they're smart, and they are very smart, they will add NFTs as part of their business model.
Sure, you purchase a subscription and you get a free NFT, or you
No, or if you're a Spotify subscriber, you can, buy merch. You can have access to buying different things at a discount because you're a Spotify, because they still have tens of millions of users, and so that's something that they're not going to want to give up easily. But they have the innovator's dilemma. They can either hang on to their old business model and say NFTs aren't going anywhere. You need to just do mobile internet, and they will then slowly start losing influence, or they can add it to their business model and continue to stay on top until someone comes up with a NFT first play that becomes more widely adopted. I mean, very few companies stay at the top for more than like one or two cycles of technology. I mean, Microsoft has been barely hanging on. I mean, they were there, in the software cycle of the 70s and 80s. Bill Gates knew that he was going to get creamed by Netscape if he didn't go and, he did this famous speech in the early 90s where he said, "We have to turn this into an internet company or we will be dead." And everybody's like, "What are you talking about? You're the largest company in the world." But, Andy Grove, who was the, former founder and one of the co-founders and CEO of Intel, said only the paranoid survive. And so that's absolutely true in technology. You have to be looking at what's coming next because it's probably going to disrupt you. And if you don't have a good way of incorporating it or knocking it off its tracks, and usually it only gets knocked off its tracks for a little while if it's good technology, then you're old news.
Looks like we have a lot of questions. I want to get through them, so.
Hello. Well, first of all, I just wanted to express gratitude for you guys creating this conversation. And I have two questions. One, what do you think of digital real estate? And second, what do you think is the biggest opportunity nobody's talking about?
Both good questions. So, digital real estate. I worked with the first blockchain real estate platform, Proppy, which is still around. Actually, the token's been doing well lately. They basically were kind of the last 2017-18 wave. So they created a token that let you go and pay broker's fees in between countries because it was difficult to go and buy. I mean, they were Bulgarians living in San Francisco who started it, and Ukrainians, and they basically found a way of buying real estate from a Ukrainian or a Bulgarian broker and paying for it from the U.S. or vice versa. Not that Bulgaria is a really hot market, nor the Ukraine for U.S., but it was a start where they were wanting to go and have it where you could go and go on the blockchain and have your mortgage and have everything else in a one-stop shop, buying something in France. So the entrenched interests in real estate, just like the stock market, because they're a regulated industry, are probably harder to disrupt than unregulated industries like art and antiques and watches. So that's why they're moving faster in those markets. The other thing also is that what exactly is the value proposition of having a tokenized piece of real estate? And I'm an investor in a couple of projects that have different ways of attacking the project. If you're simply saying, hey, I'm going to go and tokenize my house in Santurce and someone's going to want to buy it because it's tokenized, probably not. If you have a platform that perhaps does some kind of fractional ownership of, maybe disrupts the model of say, timeshares, that's a possibility. I don't think that's been done yet in a meaningful way. I was an advisor to a token. Actually, one of the founders has just moved to Puerto Rico. I don't know if Min is here tonight, but called the B token, which was sort of an Airbnb on blockchain. And, they kind of raised money a little bit too late in the kind of, cycle where, during this time of year, the bull market, everything gets funded and nobody asks too many questions. And during the bear market, everybody's just like, aren't you dead yet? I'm not going to fund you. I don't want to spend my Bitcoin that was worth 3 times as much 3 months ago on your crappy little project. And so these are just business cycles, just like nobody would fund any consumer internet companies were just like poison in 2002. If Google was looking for money in 2002, they would have gotten laughed at. Fortunately, they got funded in 1998, and they just held on and went public, and obviously the rest is history. I think digital real estate has got possibilities, but they're going to be very creative, great entrepreneurs who unveil the platforms that come up with them. I don't think one-off tokenizing of one home or a portfolio of personally owned real estate is interesting. I do think, however, that there's interesting ways of disrupting mortgages that, again, is kind of DeFi plus real estate. There's a few people who are already working on that. So that I think will be interesting. What are the opportunities that haven't been discussed yet? Oh boy, I mean, they haven't been discussed because they haven't really been implemented yet, I guess. I think for the most part that the ultimate security token endgame is where companies get to issue their stock directly onto decentralized public markets that are global. Why is it you can go and buy gold anywhere in the world, and maybe you have some local regulations about what you do with it, but you can't buy Apple stock directly if you live in France. You can't buy Samsung stock directly if you live in the US. You have to buy what's called an ADR, a depository receipt. And Apple doesn't even know who their shareholders are. They have to actually hire shareholder management companies to figure out who they think their shareholders are, who the large ones are. If all this legacy that is no longer needed goes the way of the dodo bird, just like the guys in the New York Stock Exchange who 20 years ago were running around and handing little tickets to each other and saying, barking orders. And I was told, well, it's very important to have those guys there. They have relationships. Trading wouldn't happen without them. Then NASDAQ came and these guys disappeared. And so I think you're going to see the same thing with global public equities where, when you're going public, you'll encode the rules of, what you need to do that, but you as Apple will do a direct listing. Imagine if Coinbase they're doing what's called a direct listing, but it's still under the SEC rules, et cetera, and you can't easily buy it from France. Imagine if Coinbase was able to go in and say, I'm listing a token, so you can go and buy, shares in our company at the $100 billion valuation, and by the way, you get a 10% discount on your trading fees. These hybrids of utility tokens and security tokens, I've said for a long time, are the future, but we have to get the regulators and the entrenched special interests out of the way first, and they're not easily moved because they're making money on the 3-day spread. They're making money on being the people standing in between company and buyer.
Which I think you just mentioned something that's very important. So for startups raising capital, tokenization offers a new model as far as not giving up a percentage of their company. They're able to offer a token which can not take up asset, like their company will not be split up.
You have to remember, a utility token is not raising money, it's selling a product. And it's very important to go and say that. And unfortunately these days, even saying that, you're still best off blocking the US, or Wyoming has a law that says, if we believe that you're selling a product and it's a utility token and meets these guidelines that we've put as the state of Wyoming to declare it a utility token, you're exempt from Wyoming securities registration. And the SEC has not gone after any Wyoming companies. They asked to get a no action letter saying Wyoming was exempt from federal laws, and the SEC wouldn't do that. But they also haven't come back at anybody. You know, the last administration of the SEC, in my opinion, was horrible. They did no regulations, good, bad, or ugly. They just simply prosecuted people based on vague interpretations of the 1933 Act and the 1946 Howey test based on why wine futures, where you actually got a physical bottle of wine, were not securities, and orange futures, where you got a dividend on the yield from a orange crop, were. And they said, that's all we need to know to determine whether your token is a security or not. And yet, most of the things that they used, they didn't understand the blockchain. In most cases, you were getting something that was closer to the bottle of wine because it had a utility, and you know you could use it. You weren't just doing it to get a yield off it. So I think Gensler, once he's confirmed, he was the head of the CTFC under Obama, so he knows how to write regulations. He wrote 60-something of them when he was there. So I expect, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, we're going to have clarity under him. And honestly, in the middle of a global, you know, depression and you know, so many people out of jobs, rather than continuing to go and print more money and debasing the dollar and, you know, having world record debt, why don't you let people who want to invest in companies or buy tokens buy them and create jobs? Wyoming, when people go there, and companies are happy to say, great, I don't have to go offshore and go through all these, like, you know, hoops and still not sure whether I've done things right and pay all these lawyers and several sets of accountants and this and that, so that I don't have to, like, and then I have to block people that are my natural buyers in the US because maybe, you know, until Coinbase lists us, we're not quite sure. Crypto Mom, as they call her, Hester Peirce, who's one of the commissioners of the SEC, not the chairman, proposed something called the Safe Harbor Act, which would basically give you 3 years of being able to offer your token to Americans to then be able to prove that you have sufficient decentralization, meaning you're a platform, and you're not controlled by anybody, you're controlled by the community, or that you have utility, in which case you're a taxable product. That did not go through the last administration. And because she's a Republican, I don't know if it's going to go through this administration, but Puerto Rico has had an opportunity to basically copy and paste the Wyoming law and make it work in Puerto Rico, and it would have an outsized effect of having us be a better place than Miami to do offerings for 2 reasons. Number one, would you prefer to live here or Cheyenne, Wyoming, particularly in the winter? And number two, if you go and do a token sale for a utility token in Wyoming and you raise $10 million, congratulations, you're not a security, so you can list on, you know, Binance US or Coinbase or Kraken or any of the other utility token exchanges because you're not a security, but you have to pay federal tax of 21%. In Puerto Rico, it's 4%. So better weather, same clarity. One could argue, and it has been argued, that a territory has even more separation from the SEC than a state. And I've talked to, you know, the last 3 PNP administrations about this, and you know, Pedro Piquer, who's had the same job for 3 of them, and he actually spoke at the Coin Agenda 2 years ago. They've been studying this, but governments move slowly, particularly when you've had 3 governors in 3 years. So I still have hope that we'll get this here. I'm still happy to go and, you know, meet with the government anytime they want. They're still obviously kind of new to the job, but I did have a private meeting with Pierluisi before he was elected and asked his opinions on cryptocurrency, and he seemed pro-business. I think, I'll paraphrase here, he basically said, you know, anything that, you know, brings business to the island, you know, that's not the usual suspects of tourism and agriculture are welcome. And so, you know, when the cameras are running and you've got 5 other parties attacking your every word, I realize it's more difficult to say things you can get pinned down on, but, you know, I think you have to look at the better good of Puerto Rico and be brave and say, you know, if Miami can do that, why can't Puerto Rico? And they're not even giving tax breaks, and they're not even giving friendliness. I mean, honestly, Florida's one of the worst places to go and even buy cryptocurrency. They do busts of people on local Bitcoins all the time. So
I'm starting to see that Puerto Rico may be the best place for a startup company to exist at this time and era. Like, there may not be a more suitable, more conducive, tax-friendly, open community than Puerto Rico. I mean, the cost of living is low, the quality of life is very high, the opportunity is high. It's almost like we are at the beginning of a little Silicon Valley.
And as far as crypto goes, we've got 400 people here from an industry that maybe has 50,000 people in it. So at least that is, you know, semi mid-level to senior level, jobs. So we've got, like I said before, about 10% of the top 100 platforms are represented at senior levels down here. So I should probably go and actually get that number correct. Because, you know, data is good, right? I mean, every year on our website at Transform Group, you know, we track what percentage of the coin market cap we've worked with other than Bitcoin, because, as I like to say, Satoshi didn't have a budget. And, you know, it's now 57% because we worked with Ethereum and Ripple and Tether in the early days. And, you know, those three alone are a big percentage of the top 100 market cap. So. But it would be interesting to see in the top 100 how many programs, you know, have founders down here.
100%. Be very interested to see that data. I'd love to take another question.
So I'm going to keep with NFTs. I've been watching them for a while. E&J, ENR, Chili's. Kind of just about E&J. I'm a little mad about that. But one that I haven't seen quite break out has been Wax in terms of early being the oldest. Would you say Wax has the most upside, and or is there another NFT token that you're more bullish on?
I didn't quite catch that.
You're asking about the
I'm
Wax.
asking about NFT tokens, since a lot of them have completely exploded over the last week, and I wanted to know if Wax, since they've been kind of like, they're one of the oldest and they haven't fully broken up like E&J, Chili's, and some of these others. Are you more bullish on Wax, or is there another NFTs? And the second question would be about competitors to Ethereum, Cardano and Toddy, which a lot of people seem to be very high on. Are you buying the hype on those as well, HDR?
Okay, so that's a two-part question. Obviously, Wax is an NFT platform, it's not an NFT. So, you know, there's probably about 20 platforms out there. I think Wax is doing a good job. I still, you know, am a Wax token holder, and I'm not selling right now because I think, not financial advice, I think that they're undervalued. I think that they have done a great job of executing. You know, one of the founders of Tether, William Quigley, is the founder of Wax. And so I think they've, you know, done a great job of getting, you know, deals with iconic brands like, you know, Street Fighter and Garbage Pail Kids and Topps baseball cards. And so I don't see that stopping anytime soon. William Quigley recently moved from California to Miami. I'm trying to get him to come down here and speak at a Crypto Monday, and he has spoken at quite agenda in the past. You know, the other ones, I mean, there's layer 1 and layer 2. Wax is a layer 1, and it's an EOSIO, fork. I like Telos as well. Telos is one that has very low gas fees. They don't market it only as an NFT platform, so that's maybe why it doesn't get quite as much attention, but that's the platform that Rare is using for most of its lower priced NFTs, like their books, where, you know, they're going to be competing against Amazon. You basically can go to Amazon, you know, give them 70%. You can go to a traditional publisher, give them 90%. You can go and do your own PDF on your own website, get 100%, but then have it copied mercilessly, you know, forever, or try to figure out how to go and, you know, protect it somehow they can't get, you know, copied. And Rare basically lets you have it so that every book is an NFT that can't be copied, because every time you open it, you need to go and have the key. And it's unique content that you'll get 90% of it, and between Rare and the token holders, they get the other 10%. And then they also allow you to go and get part of the resale. So I'm very bullish on them. They haven't come out as a token yet, but they're just wrapping up their equity sale, which is available to Americans. I actually have been encouraging companies that are American-based to use equity, like Andreessen Horowitz companies do. Raise enough money to go and build your blockchain so nobody can accuse you of using your funds to build the blockchain. You're basically using them as a currency of the blockchain, as a loyalty reward, as as a smart contract, as whatever your purpose of your blockchain is. And then, unfortunately, you still kind of have to, until you're listed on an exchange that takes Americans, you still have to kind of block the U.S., which I think is sad, but that's what I do. And I have a company out of Bermuda that I have some innovative methods of doing that with. Actually I was on the phone with the Bermuda government today and was trying to encourage cooperation between Bermuda and Puerto Rico, because they're trying to bring new industries there. They've got some advantages that we don't. We have some advantages they don't, particularly for Americans who are trying to go and have a corporate headquarters in other places. And so I think we need to kind of remember that we're part of the Caribbean, not just part of Latin America and part of the United States. We're kind of a triple threat. We're part of all three communities.
I think that's really something that's important to talk about as well, is the fact that the Caribbean islands are very connected, and that blockchain offers a way for them to trade assets and become more affluent.
And the second part was about Polkadot and Cardano. So they were all people I worked with when I was working in the early days of Ethereum, because we did their PR launch. And Charles has stayed a friend. We had talked about doing some marketing for him about a year ago when the price was 3 cents. We ended up not doing that, although I did have a really nice long interview with him in Point Agenda. And like I said, I got so many companies that I work with, I probably should have said, yeah, okay, I'm not working with them, on my PR division, but maybe I should pick up some stuff at 3 cents, because obviously it's done really well since then. In the last year, it's outperformed Bitcoin. Charles is a very hardworking, exceptionally bright, he's one of those rare people who basically is an entrepreneur, a marketer, and a technologist all in one, and he just basically never sleeps. And so I would never bet against Vitalik. I'd never bet against Charles. I'd never bet against Gavin. Unfortunately, one of them will prevail, but I think probably all three of them will prevail in different areas. I think right now that Cardano's a little behind because they're taking their sweet time, but maybe it's worth the wait. We'll see. I think that Binance has really leaped into the fray in terms of being a low gas alternative to Ethereum, although they are centralized. And then Polkadot, really, Gavin's strength. One thing that made Ethereum such a strong project was right after the launch, he went out and got on the road and started doing meetups all around the world to recruit developers. And he's doing it again with Polkadot. And so, I think the strength of having so many platforms develop on Polkadot, I like Polkadot, future at the current price level, not financial advice, more than I like Cardano or Ethereum. But, and I know there's a lot of the Polkadot community here as well. That's one of those, 10% of the tokens that has senior people down here. So, I like where Polkadot's going, but, there's still an awful lot of risk and reward in the future. I mean, I think that, I'm involved in a new project which is going to, look to spin off something that will be quasi-competitor to Polkadot, and it's already a top 50 project that's spinning off something else. And Transform Ventures will be investing in it, and I'll be advising it. Can't really talk about it yet, but if anybody's interested in learning more, you can pull me aside, or you can reach me at, at Michael Terpin on Twitter, just Michael Terpin. For people in Puerto Rico, I generally accept Facebook invites because it's a small island. And then, of course, LinkedIn, I will accept invites of anybody that basically says, hi, I'm in crypto, and doesn't seem scammy. So those are the main ways of reaching me if you don't know me already.
Do you have any questions from the ladies? Any other questions at all?
Looks like we're coming to the end of our night.
Thank you.
And I'll stick around for a while and get out of the Klieg lights. Thank you.
They're quite bright, but it's been lovely. Thank you guys for being so wonderful, for having us, and for listening. I hope we see you next week. Thank you, Michael, very much.
Thank you, Puerto Rico.
Thank you, Puerto Rico.
Thank you, Puerto Rico. Gracias, amigos.